I told you to close. All right. How are we doing, everybody? Go ahead and pop this up. Oh, there is so much going on this PC. Hey, close. Dude, exit. All right. So we got a bit to go over. Actually, quite a bit. Close that. Let's start with, we'll go serious, funny, something interesting, and then a couple of other fun videos. So let's go.
The Italian ambassador in the Democratic Republic of the Congo,
Oh my lord.
Luca Atanasio, was assassinated on Monday during an attack against a UN convoy in the east of the country. The Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed the death of the 43-year-old ambassador and of the policemen who were traveling on board of a convoy of the United Nations Stabilization Organization mission. Atanasio, who was shot in the abdomen, was taken to a medical center near the site of the incident, located in the city of Goma, capital of the province of North Kivu. It was also acknowledged that the other two victims were the driver.
I don't know if that is because I have so many things open, or if it's just the video. But this is not good.
And the diplomat's bodyguard.
Okay, so Italian ambassador was assassinated in the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That's fucking great. That's gonna end well. All right, time for the funny.
Dominion Voting Systems on Monday filed a massive defamation lawsuit against the businessman Mike Lindell, chief executive of MyPillow Inc., for spreading false conspiracy theories that Dominion's machines rigged November's presidential election. MyPillow was named as a co-defendant in the lawsuit. Dominion filed the case in Washington federal court and is seeking $1.3 billion in damages. In the lawsuit, lawyers for the Denver-based company said, quote, acting in concert with allies and media outlets that were determined to curry favor with one of their biggest sponsors and to promote a false preconceived narrative about the 2020 election, Lindell launched a defamatory marketing campaign about Dominion that reached millions of people and caused enormous harm to Dominion. A MyPillow representative did not immediately respond to an email seeking comment on the lawsuit. Similar lawsuits were filed against Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, two lawyers that promoted former President Donald Trump's baseless claims of widespread election fraud. Lindell, a devout supporter of Trump, financed post-election protest movements in a bid to overturn President Joe Biden's victory.
Of course he did. So that's fucking hilarious.
Lindell also used his personal Twitter account, which had nearly 500,000 followers before being suspended, and the company's account to spread unsubstantiated claims of widespread voter fraud in the presidential election.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. All right. Biden announces new changes to the PPP program for small businesses.
And today, I'm announcing additional changes to the PPP program that will make sure we look out for the mom and pop businesses even more than we already have. As I explained to Pilar and Tim, the two small business people I spoke to, on Wednesday, the Small Business Administration is going to establish a 14-day exclusive PPP loan application period for businesses and nonprofits with fewer than 20 employees. People can go out and find how to get a hold of these loans. People can find out more at the SBA.gov. Small Business Administration will also remove barriers that have stopped many businesses from being able to apply for these loans. These changes will bring much needed, long overdue to help to small businesses who really need help staying open. maintaining jobs, and making ends meet. And this is a starting point, not the ending point. We need Congress to pass my American Rescue Plan. It deals with the immediate crisis facing our small businesses. Getting our economy back means bringing our small businesses back. And that's what we're going to do. That's what I'm doing today. We're going to focus. The program ends at the end of March, but for the next 2 weeks, the only folks who can apply for that PPP money are businesses with fewer than 20 employees. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's quite a few businesses, but that's still pretty decent. Although, where's my 2000, Joe? Where is it? I'm gonna fucking Larry Kudlow. Hopefully there's no editorializing in this. I don't care. Kudlow. Oh, is it all editorializing?
He doesn't see a reason why that decision to open the case in the first place from the prior administration would need to be reversed. He also said he's open to the idea that they need to beef up resources at the DOJ's antitrust division to investigate and enforce antitrust laws seriously and vigorously. He also told senators today that when it comes to Section 230, that law that essentially shields tech companies from liability, he's open to refreshing it to make it more applicable to the modern day internet, saying he's open to lawmakers' suggestions on that. But he did specifically address two accusations that are in the news today and concerns that lawmakers had about his close ties or potentially close ties to big tech. He addressed the report that the 5 big tech firms, Alphabet, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Amazon combined donated $15 million to Biden's campaign. Together, they were the largest source of revenue for the campaign, more than any other industry. Garland told lawmakers today he will not be pressured by any donor, whether it's a donor from Google or somewhere else. He says he doesn't own any Google stock. He's in the process of divesting all of his stocks to prepare for this role, and says he will not be influenced by anyone. He also addressed reports that Susan Davies, this is someone he worked with at the DOJ before under Clinton, that he wanted her to lead the antitrust division. The reason why that was considered scandalous is because Davies was a lawyer for Facebook. She represented the company in an antitrust case. There was a concern that there would be obvious conflict of interest if she were brought on. But today he said reports that she's being considered for that top spot are incorrect, which was completely new. Reports have been out there for months that she was one of the top contenders for the role and that Garland himself wanted her for that. But he said today, essentially, those reports are not true. It's interesting that he didn't come out earlier.
No, he figured he would address it when Congress brings it up. He doesn't need to, he's the Attorney General. Let's face it, he doesn't have to address the fucking public. Not on that kind of shit. He just answers to Congress on it. I'm not saying it's good, it's just how it actually is.
When these reports had been circulating, and say that that was not something that he wanted himself. Larry?
You know, Hillary, thanks for the great work. Add Microsoft to the list, and I wonder whether the Wall Street Journal article this morning, which played everywhere, very big, knocked her out. Because you're right, this was brand new information, and it's odd just coming in.
It's not really that odd. So, Merrick Garland, for those of you who don't know, was the Supreme Court nominee that Barack Obama had placed in front of the Senate. And they decided never to bring it up for a vote because Mitch McConnell said it was too close to an election year. So he just didn't do it. And that's how we got Kavanaugh. And now we have Barrett. Oh, and Gorsuch. God, he got 3 of them? Jeez. I forget about Gorsuch. All right, so let's get into
Our
this.
new senator from California will be.
So we're going to kind of skip through. We're not going through all of this. I promise you, we're not doing that. We're going to skip through this and see if there's anything interesting. And then we'll move on.
Doesn't matter in any sense.
United States.
Independence to the Department of Justice, making it clear that the department is not the political instrument of the White House. I know Merrick Garland is up to the task. The lengthy list of testimonials speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and members of the Judiciary Committee. I am honored to appear before you today as the President's nominee to be the Attorney General. I would like first to take this opportunity to introduce you to my wife, Lynn, my daughters, Jessie and Becky, and my son-in-law, Zan. I am grateful to them and to my entire extended family that is watching today on C-SPAN every day of my life. The President nominates the Attorney General to be the lawyer, not for any individual, but for the people of the United States. July 2020 marked the 150th anniversary of the founding of the Department of Justice, making this a fitting time to remember the mission of the Attorney General and of the Department. It is a fitting time to reaffirm that the role of the Attorney General is to serve the rule of law and to ensure equal justice under law. And it is a fitting time to recognize the more than 115,000 career employees of the Department and its law enforcement agencies and their commitment to serve the cause of justice and protect the safety of our communities. If I have confirmed.
So far, he doesn't have the strongest voice, but he has a pretty solid, wording. It's a definitive rebuke of the way that Bill Barr was running the department. And it's reaffirming that he's going to be the lawyer for the people.
As Attorney General, it will be the culmination of a career I have dedicated to ensuring that the laws of our country are fairly and faithfully enforced and the rights of all Americans are protected. Before I became a judge almost 24 years ago, a significant portion of my professional life was spent at the Justice Department. As a special assistant to Ben Civiletti, the last of the trio of post-Watergate attorneys general, as a line assistant U.S. attorney, as a supervisor in the criminal division, and finally as a senior official in the department. Many of the policies that the Justice Department developed during those years are the foundation for reaffirming the norms that will ensure that the department adheres to the rule of law. These are policies that protect the independence of the department from partisan influence in law enforcement, that strictly regulate communications with the White House, that establish guidelines for FBI domestic operations and foreign intelligence collection.
Yeah, let's not increase any FBI domestic shit. Well, really, we don't need the NSA doing that shit, so.
That ensure respectful treatment of the press, that read the Freedom of Information Act generously, that respect the professionalism of DOJ employees, and that set out the principles of federal prosecution to guide the exercise of prosecutorial discretion. In conversations that I have had with many of you before this hearing, you have asked why I would agree to leave a lifetime appointment as a judge. I have told you that I love being a judge, but I have also told you that this is an important moment for me to step forward because of my deep respect for the Department of Justice and for its critical role of ensuring the rule of law. Celebrating DOJ's 150th year reminds us of the origins of the department, which was founded during Reconstruction in the aftermath of the Civil War to secure the civil rights that were promised.
No. No, don't lie, Merrick. Don't lie. You know that's wrong. Maybe you believe it's true, but policing was designed to try and round up black people and keep them subjugated, and it always has been.
In the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The first Attorney General appointed by President Grant to head the new department led it in a concerted battle to protect black voting rights from the violence of white extremists, successfully prosecuting hundreds of cases against white supremacist members of the Ku Klux Klan. Almost a century later, the Civil Rights Act of 1957 created the Department's Civil Rights Division with a mission to uphold the civil and constitutional rights of all Americans, particularly some of the most vulnerable members of our society. That mission on the website of the Department's Civil Rights Division remains urgent because we do not yet have equal justice. Communities of color and other minorities still face discrimination in housing, in education, in employment, and in the criminal justice system. And they bear the brunt of the harm caused by pandemic, pollution, and climate change. 150
Excellent optics. How well are you gonna pull through on that shit, Merrick?
years after the department's founding, battling extremist attacks on our democratic institutions also remains central to the department's mission. From 1995 to 1997, I supervised the prosecution of the perpetrators of the bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building, who sought to spark a revolution. 1995, battling extremist attacks on our democracy.
I have to know, because this involves my state.
And climate change. 150 years after the department's founding, battling extremist attacks on our democratic institutions also remains central to the department's mission. From 1995 to 1997, I supervised the prosecution of the perpetrators of the bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building, who sought to spark a revolution that would topple the federal government. If confirmed, I will supervise the prosecution of white supremacists and...
I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there. Not really. No. Timothy McVeigh and whatever the fuck the other guy is, I don't remember his name. I know, right? My own state. No, not based. They were extra cringe.
And others who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, a heinous attack that sought to disrupt a cornerstone of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power to a newly elected government. And that critical work is but a part of the broad scope of the department's responsibilities. Justice Department protects Americans from environmental degradation and the abuse of market power, from fraud and corruption, from violent crime and cybercrime, and from drug trafficking and child exploitation. And it must do all of this without ever taking its eye off of the risk of another devastating attack by foreign terrorists. The Attorney General takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I am mindful of the tremendous responsibility that comes with this role. As Attorney General, later Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson famously said, quote, "The prosecutor has more control over life, liberty, and reputation than any other person in America." While prosecutors at their best are one of the most beneficent forces in our society, when they act from malice or other base motives, they are one of the worst. Jackson then went on to say, "The citizen's safety lies in the prosecutor who tempers zeal with human kindness, who seeks truth and not victims, who serves the law and not factional purposes, and who approaches the task with humility. That was the prosecutor I tried to be during my prior service in the Department of Justice. That is the spirit I tried to bring to my tenure as a federal judge. And if confirmed, I promise to do my best to live up to that ideal as Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Garland. Before I turn to my questions, I want to lay out a few mechanics for the hearing. Senators will have 8 minutes in the first round of questions, followed by a 5-minute second round.
Okay. I think we can admit he had some pretty decent optics in the beginning there, or throughout the whole thing. To read here, a gun rights case. Liberal groups have seized on a decision on military prison at Guantanamo, claiming they show he'd side with the court's conservative wing on criminal justice. Despite nearly 2 decades on appeals court, Garland's record still presents questions about how he'd vote on hot-button issues, including abortion, gay rights, and the death penalty, should it be confirmed. Now, this was... yeah. Pre-1916. A 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit voted to strike down the D.C. handgun ban. It was cheered by gun rights. Garland voted for the full circuit court to rehear the contentious case, while the judges ultimately decided not to in a 6-4 vote. Garland's stance worries gun rights supporters. In 2003, Garland joined the court's majority in Khalid al-Oda versus U.S. The ruling held that federal district courts lack jurisdiction to hear cases challenging the legality and conditions of Guantanamo Bay detentions. No, you're a district court. But you're still a federal court. You should be able to. Come on now. Liberal groups criticize that ruling, say it would make it harder for prisoners at Guantanamo to pursue help in the courts. The Supreme Court, though, later reversed that decision in a 6-3 ruling. In 2014, Garland joined the majority in Hatem versus Obama, which upheld 2 new security policies at Guantanamo Bay. One required prisoners to meet with their attorneys in a new guarded location. The second policy requires prisoners to undergo a more invasive search of their genital area before and after meeting with their attorneys. Oh, geez. The court called the policies reasonable security precautions. No. The Catholic Association is raising concerns about Garland's 2015 vote in an abortion case. Priests for Life brought a case against the Department of Health and Human Services that challenged the Affordable Care Act's birth control mandate. D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals sided with the administration, ruling that Priests for Life religious rights were not burdened by having to opt out of the contraception mandate. When Priests for Life called for another review, Garland sided with the majority, denying a rehearing of the case. He publicly gave no reason for that decision. The challenges now. Okay. Court majority is pending in extension. National Association of Manufacturers had sued, arguing that disclosing participation in their lobbying activities would discourage supporters' First Amendment rights. Garland upheld the rule, dismissing those concerns. Okay. It is clear that the strength of the governmental interest in providing greater information about lobbying reflects the seriousness of the actual burden that disclosure puts on First Amendment rights. Yep. Has a record of siding with federal agencies in cases challenging regulatory actions. One case involved the National Labor Relations Board's decision to designate certain workers as employees rather than contractors. The circuit court overruled the NLRB decision in 2009, but Garland dissented, instead supporting the agency's move. Ooh, I don't know if I'd have to look more into that. In 2003, he wrote the court's opinion in another case upholding Labor Department citations on XL Mining for exposing workers to coal dust. Okay, that doesn't seem bad. He seems to have a fairly decent record overall, so yeah, no. Let's see what's going on. We're just going to go into this a little bit more.
And I ask members to do their best to stay within their allotted time. We will take a break every once in a while for 10 minutes. I'm hoping the first will be sometime near 11 o'clock. At about 12:15 or 12:30, we will break for lunch for 30 minutes. I beg you to stick with that schedule if you can and be back in time so that we can keep the hearing moving along. So let me, at this point, turn to questions. You were sent to Oklahoma City, 1995. What happened there was the deadliest act of homegrown domestic terrorism in modern American history. 168 people have been killed, including 19 children. Hundreds were injured. You were supervising the prosecution of Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, who were accused of being complicit and leading in that destruction. Now, if you are confirmed as Attorney General, which I believe you will be, you will face what is known as the biggest, most complex investigation in Justice Department history, and that is the investigation around the events of January 6th. 230 have been arrested so far, some 500 are under investigation. We know that the death of at least one police officer is one of the major elements in this investigation. I'd like to ask you to reflect on two things. What's going on in America? Was Oklahoma City just a one-off, unrelated to what happened here? Can you measure, based on what you've learned so far, what kind of forces are at work to divide and destroy the American dream? Secondly, when it comes to this prosecution, are there elements that we should consider in terms of law enforcement to deal with this rising threat to the American democracy?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee today. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I don't think that this is necessarily a one-off. FBI Director Wray has indicated that the threat of domestic terrorism, and particularly of white supremacist extremists, is his number one concern in this area. This is coupled with an enormous rise in hate crimes over the past few years. There is a line from Oklahoma City, and there's another line from Oklahoma City all the way back to the experiences that I mentioned in my opening with respect to the battles of the original Justice Department against the Ku Klux Klan. We must do everything in the power of the Justice Department to prevent this kind of interference with the policies of American democratic institutions. And I plan, if you now confirm me for Attorney General, to do everything in my power to ensure that we are protected.
Judge Garland, it goes without saying, but we ought to make it a record. We abhor violence, whether it comes from the right or left, whatever its source. It has no place in responsible constitutional dialogue in America. Currently, though, we are faced with elements that weren't there 25 years ago in Oklahoma City. A proliferation of weapons. Secondly, social media and the internet, which serves as a gathering place for many of these domestic terrorists. What are your thoughts about how we should deal with those elements from the law enforcement viewpoint?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I certainly agree that we are facing a more dangerous period than we faced in Oklahoma City at that time. From what I have seen, and I have no inside information about how the department is developing its work, It looks like an extremely aggressive and perfectly appropriate beginning to an investigation all across the country in the same way our original Oklahoma City investigation was, but many times more. I don't yet know what additional resources would be required by the department. I can assure you that this will be my first priority and my first briefing when I return to the department if I'm confirmed.
Judge Garland, several years ago, I went to an immigration court hearing in downtown Chicago. It was in a high-rise loop building. I met the immigration court judge. She'd been on the job almost 20 years. It seemed like a very conscientious and fair person. She asked me to stay for the docket call, particularly for the first clients on the docket. The first clients on the docket were a 4-year-old girl named Marta. When the judge asked that all of the people in the courtroom be seated, she had to be helped into the chair. It was too tall for her to get into. She was handed a stuffed animal to hold during the hearing. At the same table was a young boy with the unlikely name Hamilton, who was given a little matchbox car, which he played with on top of the table. He was 6 years old. They were the victims of the zero tolerance policy. We remember it well. Thousands of children were forcibly removed from their parents, separated, and many times lost in the bureaucracy. Some have incorrectly stated that that administration policy by the Trump administration was just a continuation of Obama-era policy. That isn't true. The Obama administration did not have policies that resulted in the mass separation of parents and children. And on rare occasions, separations occurred. This was due to suspicion of trafficking or fraud, not because of an intentional, cruel policy to separate children. The Justice Department's Inspector General conducted an investigation of the zero tolerance policy and noted that the Justice Department was, quote, the driving force, close quote, in that policy. There is still a lot that we do not know about that policy and the accountability for the officials who were responsible for it. So let me ask you this. This committee is going to hold oversight hearings to get to the bottom of it. Will you commit to cooperate with those investigations?
Senator, I think the oversight responsibility of this committee is one of its very most important things. It's a duty imposed by the Constitution, and I greatly respect it. I think that the policy was shameful. I can't imagine anything worse than tearing parents from their children. And we will provide all of the cooperation that we possibly can.
I thank you for that. When it comes to congressional oversight, this committee has a role in restoring independence and integrity to the Justice Department through oversight hearings. It has a long-standing tradition of holding annual Justice Department oversight hearings, but sadly, it's been 3 years since the Attorney General has been called before this committee. I pledge that as chairman, I'll hold annual DOJ oversight hearings where members from both sides of the aisle can ask important questions of you in that capacity. I don't want to go into detail, but ask you, obviously, would you agree to cooperate in that commitment to oversight hearing?
Of course, if I'm confirmed, I will certainly cooperate.
And when requests are made for information by members of the committee, I hope that I can also have your commitment to cooperation in providing timely answers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will be as responsive as we possibly can. As I said, I have great respect for and belief in the oversight role of this committee.
Thank you. Senator Grassley?
Yeah.
Okay. He's actually answering fairly solidly to get put in. Not entirely sure how I feel about him. Oh my God. Why you don't have Twitter open? Duh. Oh, somebody said Cenk Uygur is a near attendant Democrat. And I'm like, duh.
Since you're a currently sitting judge, you're bound by the code of conduct of U.S. judges. Nevertheless, I hope that we can get frank answers from you on your views. And when we talked last on the phone, you told me you would get guidance from the administrative office on what you can or can't say. I assume that you sought that guidance. If so, what did they advise you?
Yes, Senator Grassley, I did, and they advised me just as you and I thought that they would. Canon 3 bars me from commenting on any pending or impending case that is in any court, but I am free to talk about policy with you.
Okay. I'm going to go to the Durham investigation. At Barr's hearing, he stated the following regard to Mueller's investigation, quote, "It's virtually important that the special counsel be allowed to complete his investigation." Also at that same hearing, Senator Feinstein asked, quote, "Will you commit to providing Mr. Mueller with the resources, funds, and time needed to complete his investigation?" End of quote. Attorney General Barr answered Senator Feinstein with a one word, yes. With respect to Special Counsel Durham's investigation, I expect that he will be allowed to complete his investigation. If confirmed, will you commit to providing Special Counsel Durham with the staff, resources, funds, and time needed to thoroughly complete the investigation?
So, Senator, I don't have any information about the investigation. As I sit here today, and another one of the very first things I'm going to have to do is speak with Mr. Durham to figure out how his investigation is going. I understand that he has been permitted to remain in his position, and sitting here today, I have no reason to think that that was not the correct decision.
Okay, and I suppose that would be an answer that he would only be removed for cause then? Would that be your position?
Well, Senator, I really do have to have an opportunity to talk with him. I have not had that opportunity. As I said, I don't have any reason from what I know now, which is really very little, to make any determination on that ground, but I don't have any reason to think that he should not remain in place.
Okay.
Now, some people are going to say that's pretty weaselly, but I think that's actually the best answer he could give at the time. He's like, I don't have enough information on this shit to make any sort of judgment, so I can't commit to saying yes or no here. But as it stands, I don't see a reason to remove him.
If confirmed, would you commit to publicly releasing Special Counsel Durham's report just like Mueller report was made public?
So, Senator, I am a great believer in transparency. I would, though, have to talk with Mr. Durham and understand the nature of what he's been doing and the nature of the report. But I am very much committed to transparency and to explaining Justice Department decision-making.
At this point, I'm not going to take exception to the answers you gave me about Durham because I think you're an honorable person. They're not quite as explicit as I hope they would be, like we got from Barr for the Mueller investigation. But I think you've come close to satisfying me, but maybe not entirely. We're in the midst of a polydrug crisis. In addition to opioids, methamphetamine, and cocaine, fentanyl and fentanyl analogs are plaguing our country. Increasingly sophisticated drug trafficking organizations, both domestic and internationally, try to skirt the law by changing their molecular structure. So the Center for Disease Control has found that drug overdose deaths rose their highest level ever measured during the pandemic, with the overall jump in deaths being driven most substantially by drugs like fentanyl. We must stop this fentanyl substance from entering our neighborhoods and killing thousands of Americans. So my question is, as you lead the Justice Department, having oversight over the Drug Enforcement Administration within that department, and they will be addressing the spread of fentanyl analogs and related substances by pushing for continued class-wide prohibition of fentanyl. So I didn't quite make my question clear. Would you lead the Justice Department in pushing for continued class-wide prohibition of fentanyl dialogues?
Senator, I'm familiar with this problem. One of my roles as the Chief Judge of the D.C. Circuit was to serve on the Pretrial Services Committee on the Committee for the Pretrial Services Agency for the district, and we were constantly advised of the fact that the formula was being slightly changed constantly, and this was a problem both for detection as well as for the problem of enforcement. To be honest, I'm no chemist. This is one of the reasons I ended up being a lawyer instead of a doctor. But I would need to look at what would be proposed. But I do understand the scope of this problem, and I'm in favor of doing something either by scheduling or legislation, if I'm confirmed, that would address the problem that you're talking about, which is an enormous problem for enforcement.
Yeah. I want to go to the death penalty because we have some people already prosecuted where the death penalty has been advocated or sought, and one of those is the people that were involved in Boston Marathon. So the question, the Justice Department, again under the Obama administration, sought and received an appropriate sentence of death. That sentence is currently being appealed. Will you commit to defending these sentences on appeal?
Well, Senator, now we're rubbing up against exactly the problem that you asked me about in the beginning. These are pending cases, and as a sitting judge, the canons bar me from making comment on pending cases.
My last question will have to deal with the investigation that's underway by some of us in Congress about Hunter Biden. Have you discussed the case with the president or anyone else? And I don't expect you to discuss your private conversation with the president, but members of this committee always ask judges or other people, did you discuss with the president, for instance, your position on abortion? So have you discussed this Hunter Biden case with the president or anyone else?
I have not. The president made abundantly clear in every public statement before and after my nomination that decisions about investigations and prosecutions will be left to the Justice Department. That was the reason that I was willing to take on this job. And so the answer to your question is no.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. Senator Leahy would be next, but he is outside of the jurisdiction of Zoom at the moment. I guess that's appropriate. And so, Senator.
Oh, shit. Obama got caught following someone called Sarah J. XXX. Okay, what are we dealing with here?
And I'm introducing a 9/11 Commission bill, but I want to turn to beginnings of our democracy.
Well, Senator, I do think the 9/11 Commission was very useful and very helpful in understanding what happened then. And of course, the Congress has full authority to conduct this kind of oversight investigation or to set up an independent commission. The only thing that I would ask, if I were confirmed, is that care be taken that it not the that commission's investigation not interfere with our ability to prosecute individuals and entities that caused the Capitol, the storming of the Capitol. And as you well know, this is a very sensitive issue about disclosing operations which are still in progress, disclosing our sources and methods, and allowing people to testify in a way that then makes it impossible to prosecute them. So with those caveats, I certainly could not object to anything that the Congress would want to do in this regard.
Understood. Thank you, Judge. I'm encouraged by the broad bipartisan support you've already garnered from this committee and publicly, and look forward to supporting your confirmation.
Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are we ready for this? This is gonna be fucking great. I'm gonna look and see who all I missed. Wait. Okay, that's not Lindsey Graham. Watched that. Oh. There's Lindsey.
Those decisions will only be made by the Attorney General, and that is what I plan to do. I do not plan to be interfered with by anyone. I expect the Justice Department will make its own decisions in this regard.
Well, thank you. I'm going to cease at this time, but I just want to say that I think you've had a remarkable career. You've done very special things, and always in a very reasonable, sober, penetrating way. So I just want to say thank you for that.
I'm grateful, Senator. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. We hope that Senator Graham, who is next up, is ready. Senator Graham?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 8
Great.
minutes.
Yes, sir. Congratulations to you, and Judge Garland, congratulations on your appointment. I think you're a very good pick for this job. So I'm going to try to go through as much information as I can. Do you promise to defend the Portland courthouse against anarchists, the federal court building in Portland?
Any attack on a federal building or damage to a federal building violates the federal statutes, and those who do it will be prosecuted.
Okay, when it comes to the people who attacked the Capitol on January the 6th, will you let the committee know if you need more resources?
Yes, absolutely, Senator. I really do think one of my first jobs is to consult with the prosecutors and the agents who are investigating that matter and see what resources they need. And I'm eager to have an invitation. I'm eager to have an invitation from the Senate to ask for more resources.
Surely. Thank you. I think all of us want to prosecute every single person that deserves to be prosecuted. So whatever you need, I'm sure you will get from this committee.
Thank you,
Senator. Have you read the Horowitz report?
So, Senator, in our conversations, you asked me to read it. It's some 400 pages long, and I asked you for permission to read only the also very long executive summary.
Okay. That's good.
And I have done that.
So what's your general take?
Well, my general take is that there were certainly serious problems with respect to FISA applications, particularly for Mr. Page, and in the subsequent report to the way in which FISA applications are documented. The Inspector General had a substantial number of recommendations for how this could be fixed and how it must be fixed. I understand that he submitted those to the FBI director, and I understand the FBI director agreed totally, and either has made those changes or is in the course of making them. I intend, if I am confirmed, to speak more deeply and directly with Mr. Horowitz, the Inspector General, about this, and with Director Wray, and make sure that these and any other things that are necessary be done. I am always concerned and have always been concerned that we be very careful about FISA. It is a tool that is very useful and important for investigations involving foreign agents.
That's good to hear. So Kleinsmith, are you familiar with the fact that a lawyer for the FBI has been prosecuted, pled guilty to altering information to the FISA court?
I did read about that. Yes, Senator.
What would happen to somebody under your charge that did that? How would you feel about the behavior?
Well, somebody who makes a false statement to the FBI or the Inspector General during an investigation has violated 18 U.S.C. 1001, and I've prosecuted those myself.
Do you believe the Durham investigation is a legitimate investigation?
Senator, I don't know anything really about the investigation.
You've read the Horowitz report. Do you think somebody should look at what happened?
Well, I do think somebody should look at what happened with respect to those FISAs, absolutely, and I believe the Inspector General has done that.
Based on what your review of the Horowitz report, do you think Jim Comey was a good FBI director?
Senator, I really don't want to get into analyzing any of the previous directors.
You've been very critical and appropriately so at times. I just find it pretty stunning that you can't say, in my view, that he was a terrible FBI director. But have you ever been to the border? Have you ever been to the U.S.-Mexican border?
No, sir, I haven't.
So I'd like you to go, because I just got back, because I learned that drug cartels are using our asylum laws against us. They will collect people to sort of rush the border, and once they're apprehended, they'll claim asylum, and most of these claims, 90%, are rejected, and that will take resources away from securing the border and detecting drugs and protecting the nation against terrorism. This is a behavior by the cartels. Will you look into that practice of using asylum claims by drug cartels to weaken border security?
I had not known about this, and I will certainly look into this problem. I think the drug cartels are a major menace to our society, and the poison that they put into our streets is damaging communities of every kind. If they have a particular, if they have
asked you to visit the border, I think you'll find patriots there, and when they make mistakes, they need to be held accountable. But that's one of the toughest jobs in the country.
Senator, I apologize for speaking over you just now, but there's like a little bit of a lag.
I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. It's a lag in the technology, I think.
Okay. Well, I have a Southern accent, so
it's not the accent. I'm familiar with Southern accents.
Okay,
high-speed internet.
That is a little funny. I'm not gonna lie. I'll give Lindsey Graham that one. Sorry, I have a Southern accent.
This is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Are you concerned that Al Qaeda and ISIS types are going to try to hit us again?
I'm very concerned that foreign terrorist organizations will try to hit us again. Yes, I don't know enough at this point about the capabilities of those two, but it really doesn't matter which foreign terrorist. The terrible thing is the attack. And as I said in my opening statement, with all the other things that the Justice Department has to do, it must always keep its eye on the ball with respect to foreign terrorist attack. I was sitting in my office, arriving at my office as the first plane hit the Trade Center, and I was sitting in my office and could see smoke rising over the Pentagon. I can assure you that this is top of mind for me.
Well, one of the reasons I am very inclined to support you is I believe what you just said is true. I think you have a very deep understanding of the threats America faces, and to my colleagues on the committee, Al Qaeda has been diminished. ISIS footprint has been greatly diminished, but they're out there and they're trying to, they will this year sometime, I hope I'm wrong, let us know they're still there. So it's great to hear the potential future Attorney General understanding that our nation is very much still under threat. So when it comes to interacting with
All right, this is where I have issues, because we really aren't under any sort of threat. We are the threat. We are the threat. We're the big ones with the guns and the nukes and all them fancy bombs. So I have a major issue with that one. That's just the fear-mongerings. Like, logically, you think about it. What nation really is going to threaten us in a physical war? Point me to that. I mean, North Korea postures, but we know. Everyone knows how that would go. So it's absolutely ridiculous. Super dumb. Give me 1 second. All right. So, yeah, obviously there's not there isn't a nation on this planet that can threaten us individually. I mean, maybe multiple nations banded together against the United States, that'd be a thing. But not really under very much of a threat, to be completely honest. Oh god, my mouth is so dry. To be completely honest. Here, you can't hear that.
With the
there we go.
committee, we're going to be talking about Section 230 reform. What's your impression of Section 230 liability protection for big tech, and is it time to revisit that topic?
Senator, I have to be the first to confess when I have relatively limited information about a subject. I have had one case on Section 230. It was a very straightforward application of the law, so of course I know what it is. I also know that many members of this committee have ideas for how it should be amended, and I would have to have an opportunity, if I'm confirmed, to talk with you about that. And to understand all the conflicting concerns and the complexities of how to alter it if it's to be altered. The devil in these sort of things is always in the details. And you on the committee know more about this than I do, and I look forward, if I'm confirmed, to having the chance to talk about it with you.
Thank you. Congratulations on your nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Senator.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome, Judge Garland.
Thank you, Senator.
People who've been prosecutors understand that it's not the legislature's business to meddle around in a prosecution.
Okay. So he's handling questions. Let's move to 3. You're not somebody whose name I really know.
When you talked about being the lawyer.
Klobuchar.
And congratulations to you, Judge Garland, on your nomination.
The only pink shirt in the entire area.
I listened with much happiness in your opening remarks when you talked about being the lawyer for the people, that you want to serve the law and not factional.
That's going to be repudiation of the guys in there. Come on. Wear more color, y'all. Really? Come on. If she's the only one in there wearing some sort of color, that's... Like not just black and white. Nah, she's got the what is that, magenta? Some sort of pinkish color. Y'all can be in there in your purple suits. I love purple. Purple's a great color.
Purposes, and that you use the important adjective humble. I think we could need a little bit more of that in this town, so I appreciate that. And I was also glad that you mentioned when President Biden nominated you, Attorney General Edward Levy, who taught an iconic first-year law class at the University of Chicago that I took. And like Edward Levy, who took office after Watergate, you will take on the Department of Justice at a critical time and will have the great task of restoring its ideals of independence and fidelity to the Constitution and to the law. What is the number one thing you want to do to boost morale in the Department of Justice on day one?
Well, on day one, I'm hopefully, if I'm confirmed, I will take an oath in which I say.
Oh my God, the softball shit. Okay. Let's move forward. I heard Ted Cruz get mentioned earlier.
In a case called Parker versus District of Columbia, a case that later became known as District of Columbia versus Heller. As I recall, you voted for rehearing en banc with respect to an opinion striking down that same ban on handguns within the District of Columbia. And of course, later in the same proceedings of the same case, the Supreme Court struck down the ban. Can you tell us why you voted the way that you did, and why you voted to give D.C. another chance to defend its ban on handguns in that case?
Yes, Senator. As I know you know, because you were a law clerk yourself, you know that rehearing en banc is a vote to hear a case. It's not a vote on the merits of the case. And in my case, for myself, it's never a vote on the merits. It's a vote to rehear the case. The panel decision was the first time, I think ever, a court of appeals had held the individual right to keep and bear arms, which you are exactly right, the Supreme Court did uphold in the end. Every court of appeals had decided to the contrary, and the issue was plainly one that would require looking at a deep historical record and as to the way that it had been applied. I thought this was an extremely important issue, important enough since it was the very first time that we should hear it en banc. I was not the only judge, and other judges, including a judge appointed by the president of a different party, also voted, and for the same reason, so that we would have an opportunity to hear the case.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about the meaning of the Second Amendment. How do you view it? And do you agree with Justice Thomas's analysis in his dissent in the Rogers case that the Second Amendment right to bear arms certainly includes the right to carry operable firearms in public for self-defense?
So my view is totally controlled by the Heller opinion. And in that case, Justice Scalia held that there was an individual right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. In the subsequent McDonald case, the court said that was a fundamental right, which applied to the states as well. It is a right, as Justice Scalia said in the opinion, like all rights, that is subject to some limitations. The court has not given us much more to work with at this point, and I said with respect to my vote en banc, this is a matter that requires careful historical examination, which I have never done, and I certainly can't do sitting here for you. So I don't have an opinion on that question.
Okay. You've been in a judicial role for the last 20 going on 25 years.
Yes, sir.
You'll be in a different role, confirmed to this position, one in which you'll have a significant impact on policy. So let's talk about policy as it relates to the Second Amendment briefly. Do you support universal background checks?
Well, I do think that it's very important that we be careful that people who are entitled to have guns get the background check that allows them to have them, and that those who are not entitled and we are concerned about because they're threats, because of they're felons, or for whatever reason barred by the law, that we have that there is an opportunity to determine that they not be given a gun.
Do you support banning specific types of guns?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Do you support banning of certain types of firearms?
Well, as I'm sure you know, the president is a strong supporter of gun control and has been an advocate all of his life, his professional life, on this question. The role of the Justice Department is to advance the policy program of the administration as long as it is consistent with the law. And as I said, so far we have a little indication from the Supreme Court as to what this means, but we don't have a complete indication. Where there is room under the law for the president's policies to be pursued, then I think the president is entitled to pursue them.
What about policies that would support holding firearms manufacturers liable for damage caused by people using firearms they produced to commit
Ah, jeez. I hate when it does that. Two point oh, fine. All right.
The president may have a position on this question. I have not thought myself deeply about this. I don't think it raises a Second Amendment issue itself, the question of liability protection, but I have not addressed this in any way, and I need to think about this considerably more.
The other questions I raised potentially implicate the Second Amendment. That one raises other policy concerns.
I understand.
I understand that. Let's talk about FISA briefly. Yes. Senator Leahy and I have offered an amendment to reform the FISA process by strengthening the amicus curiae provisions that are already in there in existing law, that have been put in there by, among other provisions, the USA Freedom Act, which Senator Leahy and I got passed through Congress and signed into law by President Obama in 2015. And our amendments would also require the government to disclose relevant exculpatory evidence, both to the FISA court and to the amici. This is an amendment that ended up passing the Senate last year by a bipartisan supermajority of 77 to 19. Do you support reforms to FISA, like those I just described in the Leahy amendment?
So I think FISA is an extremely important tool for the Justice Department and the intelligence community in general to protect the country from foreign agents and foreign terrorists. On the other hand, it is extremely important that everything we do with respect to FISA, and I've felt this way my entire professional life also, that we do so in accordance with the law and with respect for the constitutional rights of citizens. I don't know very much specifically about your two proposals. I do know the current rules with respect to amicus, and I have had the opportunity to discuss those with judges on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and everyone seems quite happy with the way that process is going. I don't know what more might be needed. I would have to study that.
Mr. Chairman, I see my time has expired. I've got one very brief follow-up. Can I just finish that question? Thank you. On this topic of questions related to FISA, I also wanted to ask you, do you think that the federal government ought to be able to collect American citizens' web browsing or internet search history without a search warrant supported by probable cause?
I know this is a big issue. I don't, my experience with FISA comes from a slightly different era. I had a lot of experience, but it was very different era, and I followed this a little bit. I obviously haven't had any cases on it myself. I'd have to look at it. I believe in judicial review, and I'm a strong supporter of and respectful of judicial review of orders, but I don't know what the practicalities of going for a probable cause warrant in those circumstances would be, if there would be an emergency, et cetera. And I'd be eager to engage with you and other members of the committee who are concerned about this so that I can understand this problem more fully.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
These
Senator
are just
Coons?
easy.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley. Judge Garland, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your nomination, and please convey.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Garland, welcome.
Here we go. Cruise.
Thank you, Senator.
Congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
In 2+ decades on the court, you have built a reputation for integrity and for setting aside partisan interests and following the law. The job to which you have been appointed is a very different job. And as I look back over the 8 years of the Obama-Biden Justice Department, in my view, the most problematic aspect of that tenure was that the Department of Justice was politicized and weaponized in a way that was directly contrary to over a century of tradition of the Department of Justice of being apolitical.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
And not a partisan tool to target your opponents. So it is very much my hope, if you're confirmed as Attorney General, that you will bring that reputation for integrity to the Department of Justice and demonstrate a willingness to stand up for what will be inevitable political pressure to once again politicize the Department of Justice and use it as a tool to attack the political opponents of the current administration. Eric Holder, before he was nominated.
Cruz, do you realize who you're talking about? Biden won't attack people in his party. He won't attack people on the other side except for mild criticisms. And sometimes he comes out hard against people like you, but he's never done anything. It's always talk, and then he turns around and tries to work with you.
As Attorney General, had likewise built a reputation as being relatively nonpartisan and a prosecutor with integrity. And unfortunately, his tenure as Attorney General did enormous damage to that reputation. As was previously discussed, Eric Holder described his role as Attorney General as being the wingman for President Obama. Am I right in assuming you do not view your role as Attorney General as being Joe Biden's wingman?
Yeah, Senator, as I said, I don't want to comment on any individual's conduct as any of my predecessors or FBI directors' conduct in any way. But I can assure you I do not regard myself as anything other than the lawyer for the people of the United States. And I am not the president's lawyer. I am the United States lawyer. And I will do everything in my power, which I believe is considerable, to fend off any effort by anyone to make prosecutions or investigations partisan or political in any way. My job is to protect the Department of Justice and its employees in going about their job and doing the right thing according to the facts and the law.
Under the Obama administration, the IRS targeted the political opponents of the president. It targeted conservatives for their speech. It targeted pro-Israel groups. It targeted Tea Party groups. It targeted individuals perceived to be on the opposite political side as the
Straight up
administration.
lying
You commit
right
as
now.
Attorney General that you will not allow the Department of Justice to be used to target those who are perceived as political opponents because they are political opponents.
Absolutely, I will not.
Also under the Obama administration, Operation Choke Point was used to pressure lawful organizations, lawful institutions, for example, that sell firearms, to constrain their lawful activity and to use regulatory authority to abuse and force them to comply with the administration's stated policies. Do you believe it's appropriate for the administration to use regulatory pressure to force lawful behavior to stop?
Senator, I'm not aware of the specific that you're giving, and I expect you don't expect that I would have been aware of it. But of course, I do not believe, as a general matter, that regulations should be used.
God damn it. Okay, I'm gonna have to listen to that again, entire thing, because I just, Know Nothing TV said, many edgy white kids want to be a libertarian at 14, but little do they know that it's the libertarians that want them for being 14. Oh, God damn it.
Lawful institutions, for example, that sell firearms, to constrain their lawful activity and to use regulatory authority to abuse and force them to comply with the administration's stated policies. Do you believe it's appropriate for the administration to use regulatory pressure to force lawful behavior to stop?
Senator, I'm not aware of the specific that you're giving, and I expect you don't expect that I would have been aware of it. But of course, I do not believe, as a general matter, that regulations should be used to stop people from doing what they're lawfully entitled to do, unless the regulation is pursuant to a statute, obviously, in which Congress is given authority to change the rules.
As you also know, Attorney General Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress, criminal contempt of Congress. That was a bipartisan vote. 18 Democrats voted to hold Attorney General Holder
He's not
in
going to
contempt.
comment Ted.
They did so because he refused to produce documents to Congress for Congress's investigation of the Fast and Furious scandal, a major scandal that resulted in the death of 2 federal law enforcement officers. You've previously committed to senators on this panel that under your leadership, the Department of Justice will comply to the extent possible with requests from this committee. And I want to, in the course of this question, associate myself with Senator Whitehouse's comments and questions. He and I disagree on a great many issues, but on this particular issue, we are emphatically in agreement that senators from this committee should get answers, should get candid answers, should get substantive answers, should get real answers from the Department of Justice, regardless of the party of the senator asking that question, that is a level of oversight that the American people have a right to expect. Do you agree with that?
I do think that this is a level of oversight the American people have a right to expect. I want the department, if I'm confirmed, to be responsive to the extent it's possible with respect to the Justice Department's appropriate equities, to be responsive to the requests for information.
So you've had, previously you said you've read the executive summary of the Horowitz report. What was your reaction to the Horowitz report?
Well, I thought, as Mr. Horowitz explained, and I believe Director Wray agreed, there were problems with respect to the applications for several FISAs, that those were not consistent with the internal regulations of the department, and that those problems had to be corrected. I think deeply that we have to be careful about how we use FISA, and that's the reason we have pretty strict regulations internally and policies, and we need to find out why they aren't followed and to be sure that they are followed. I understand that was the purpose of his report and his recommendations to Director Wray.
So you described the report as saying there were problems. That's a fairly anodyne way of characterizing it, given the multiple material misstatements the Horowitz report details, including Mr. Klein-Smith's fabrication of evidence and lying to a court, which he's now pleaded guilty to. I think that was yet another example of the deep politicization of the Department of Justice, culminating in a meeting with the acting Attorney General, President Obama, Vice President Biden in the Oval Office concerning the targeting of their political opponent. Will you commit to this committee that under your leadership, the Department of Justice will not target the political opponents of this administration, and there will be real scrutiny? What that report outlines, among other things, is weaponizing Oppo research from the Hillary Clinton campaign and launching a criminal investigation based on that. Will you commit that that conduct will not be acceptable under any Department of Justice you're leading?
So absolutely, Senator, but without trying to comment specifically on that matter, it's totally inappropriate for the department to target any individual because of their politics or their position in a campaign. The only basis for targeting has to be evidence of the risk of a foreign intelligence problem or of a criminal problem. And that is a nonpartisan issue. That is a question of objective facts and law, and it can never be an effort to help one party or another party. In investigations and prosecutions, there is no party. The department is an independent, nonpartisan actor, and that's my job to ensure that that's the case.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Cruz. We now understand that Senator Leahy.
Okay, so that was a whole bunch of Cruz whining. the way Cruz does. Conservatives. I really wanted to hear the Cruz questioning while I rolled a joint. Don't care. Where is... I was about to say, is that it?
Is relevant to the question of, but yes, I think just
He's
everybody
always
treated
bad.
equally.
Talked about what to you is justice?
Everybody treated equally, regardless of their position in society, powerful, powerless, rich, poor, Republican, Democrat, black, white, equal treatment, equal justice under the law.
I want to go a little further, press you a little bit on that. Is it justice if you have an unjust law that's applied equally?
Well,
no.
No, the unjust law is itself the lack of justice.
Absolutely, the unjust law is the lack of
Let's
justice.
narrow
Don't
it
let
down
anybody tell you otherwise.
to punishment in
God
justice.
damn it.
If I suggested to you that justice and the concept of punishment is when someone gets what he deserves, would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I suppose it depends on what gets what he deserves mean, but yes, I think justice requires individualized determination of the kind of crime you did, and the mitigating circumstances, yes.
Well, let me put it another way. If is a person who commits a crime a sinner in the moral sense or a sick person?
Well, this is again probably beyond my competence. I think with justice comes mercy, and so I think we have to take into consideration all different kinds of things. I also think that the kind of crime that we're talking about is relevant to the question of what kind of person it is. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just don't know exactly what you're asking me.
Okay. Let me shift gears here.
Yeah.
Were you chief judge when the coronavirus hit us?
Unfortunately for my successor, my term ran out just before coronavirus hit us.
Well, if you had been chief judge,
Yes.
would you have adopted a rule that said if one of our employees in the court gets coronavirus and goes to the hospital and is treated and is released and wants to come back to work at the court, it would be discriminatory to ask them to take a coronavirus test?
No.
Okay. Isn't that what happened with a lot of our nursing homes throughout the country?
You know, I honestly don't know what happened with the nursing homes. I don't know what they were doing with respect to I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be evasive. I really don't know the facts here. I mean, I think in an example you gave me, there's nothing discriminatory about asking people who might be infected from a public health point of view to be sure they don't infect other people. And if a determination is made they're not infected, then of course that's the end of it. Equal treatment doesn't mean we don't take into consideration the possibilities of different degrees of health in a particular circumstance. And I honestly don't know what happened with the nursing home. I know that it was terrible that many people got COVID in the nursing homes, and it was a major vector of the spread of the infection. But I don't know why that was, except that there are people cooped up in one place, and it's easy to spread that way.
All right. I think science tells us that keeping our schools closed has a disproportionate impact on poor people and children from poor families, and on families, including but not limited to children of color. At what point do you think our refusal of some of our leadership in our schools to reopen becomes a civil rights violation?
So, Senator, I completely agree with your description of the consequences of the school closing. I tutor two children in a neighborhood of Washington, D.C., where most of the students in the school are people of color, and I've been able to tutor them by Zoom every week, but they have, and they're taking classes by Zoom, and it's much more difficult, obviously, for them, although they've done terrifically, not because of me, but they have, than it would be with people with other resources.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I think that, public officials have to weigh very serious competing concerns with respect to how to deal with COVID. There's just no doubt about it. On the one hand, we have to be very worried about sending kids back in their schooling. And on the other hand, we have to be very worried about not spreading the disease in a way that kills them, or more importantly, not more likely, their parents or their grandparents. And I don't want to be the person who makes that judgment.
I understand. I get it. Sorry to interrupt. I hate.
No, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
We just have limited time. You have written in one of your opinions, I'm going to read, I know you haven't memorized all of your opinions. You said the Constitution, quote, does not contemplate that the District of Columbia, may serve as a state for purposes of the apportionment of congressional representatives. That textual evidence is supported by historical evidence concerning the general understanding at the time of the district's creation. Is that still your considered opinion?
Yes, and I would say that is a case.
Unbased. DC should be a state. Bad.
One of my earliest cases, which taught me what it means to be a judge, which is to do something the opposite of what you would do if you had public policy concern. I think that citizens of the District of Columbia should be able to vote, but I didn't think that the Constitution gave me authority on my own to give it to them. And it made me sad, but it reaffirmed my role as a judge.
Okay. In my last 20 seconds, I'm going to ask you if you agree with this statement. Allowing, and I'm not suggesting the answer one way or the other, I just want to know what you believe. Allowing biological males to compete in an all-female sport deprives women of the opportunity to participate fully and fairly in sports and is fundamentally unfair to female athletes.
This is a very difficult societal question that you're asking here. I know what underlies it.
I know, but you're going to be Attorney General.
Well, but I may not be the one who has to make policy decisions like that, but it's not that I'm adverse to it. Look, I think every human being should be treated with dignity and respect. And that's an overriding sense of my own character, but an overriding sense of what the law requires. The particular question of how Title IX applies in schools is one, and in light of the Bostic case, which I know you're very familiar with, is something that I would have to look at when I have a chance to do that. I've not had the chance to consider these kinds of issues in my career so far. But I agree that this is a difficult question.
Thank you, Judge.
For his first question as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Alex Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Garland, and to your family, just thank you for your many, many years of public service, and should you be fortunate enough to be confirmed in this next chapter. I've spent a little bit more than 20 years in public service myself in different capacities, including the prior 6 years prior to my appointment to the Senate as California's Secretary of State and Chief Elections Officer. My mission in that role was to increase voter participation and ensure free and fair elections. As the country has become more diverse, not just states like California and New York, but throughout the nation, it's no coincidence that we have seen a resurgence of white supremacy and violent extremism. And history is clear. Voter suppression is rooted in white supremacy. This is true now and has been true ever since Reconstruction and the establishment of the Department of Justice, just as this committee has acknowledged at its outset. It should not be lost on any of us that after the 2013 Shelby v. Holder decision by the Supreme Court, we've seen a wave of legislation in states across the nation which have the effect of making it harder for eligible citizens to register to vote, to stay registered to vote, or to simply cast their ballot. I know Senator Leahy touched on the subject of voting rights in his questioning earlier today, but I want to acknowledge that despite the success of the 2020 election, which has been deemed secure, new voter suppression laws are being introduced right now across the country under the false pretext of preventing voter fraud. Now, we all saw how former President Trump's years of lies about voter fraud, the big lie, radicalized many of his supporters and led not just to physical threats against elections officials, elections offices, polling places, and even voters, but they ultimately led to the violent insurrection here in the nation's capital. I know you touched on this in your opening remarks, but can you expand on how you will combat the white supremacy that threatens the safety and fairness of our elections specifically?
Well, you've asked a lot of questions all in one, which is
it's complicated.
It's a complicated problem, right? So I strongly believe in voting and in increasing every possible opportunity for voting, which of course Congress can do even on its own. The Elections Clause of the Constitution permits the Congress to set time, place, and manner and to alter state regulations in that respect. In default, the state decides, but Congress can act that way. So that is one thing that Congress could do as a matter of legislation. As I said, I think I'd like to work with the Congress on improving the record with respect to Section 4 so that we can use the tool of Section 5. We do have the authority of Section 2. It does require, it changes the burden of proof, and it requires to attack one by one changes in election laws. But it does give us the opportunity to bring cases both where there was intention to discriminate, but also where there's a overall disparate impact with respect to discrimination. So we have a number of tools available to us, and the voting rights section of the Civil Rights Division was established for the purpose of pursuing those cases, and we would do so.
Okay, thank you. It's, I want to dig a little bit deeper on this because you're absolutely right. We need, in my opinion, to restore the full strength of the Federal Voting Rights Act. There's a lot that can and should be done, not just in terms of elections administration with respect to voting rights, but the protection of voters themselves. people should be able to vote free of any harassment, intimidation, obstacles, etc. And part of what works against that is, again, rooted in white supremacy, this big lie. We all sat through the impeachment trial, and the results notwithstanding, I can't help but be moved by the evidence presented by the House managers. Again, how President Trump's big lie about voter fraud radicalized so many of his supporters. Now, I was struck by a February 19th opinion piece in the Washington Post by Jim Sciutto about the parallels between the Capitol insurrectionists and foreign terrorist organizations that respectfully ask be inserted into the record, Mr. Chairman. In it, Jim Sciutto writes, and I'll quote, "Domestic radicalism has deep parallels to jihadist terrorism. Both movements are driven by alienation from the political system and a resulting breakdown in social norms. For some groups and individuals, this breakdown leads to violence they see as justified to achieve political ends." End quote. Now, as we all know, the definition of terrorism is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political ends. President Trump's political end was clear: stopping the certification of the 2020 election at the Capitol on January 6th. One could argue that right-wing groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers have acted like terrorist cells, communicating with one another, training together, and preparing for the moment they are activated for their mission. Indeed, President Trump instructed the Proud Boys on
Not a big fan of this line of questioning here, because anytime somebody goes out and trains together and they're not part of the military, they go out and do exercise and stuff, they want to practice their aim, shooting guns and stuff, they could be targeted by whatever kind of legislation that gets brought up. I dislike the wording of this. I'm not okay with this one. You need to peel that one back a bit.
on national television to stand back and stand by. And then he summoned them to the Capitol on January 6th as Congress was meeting to certify the election. What happened on January 6th was not a property crime, was not vandalism in reference to a question you were asked earlier. Judge Garland, as we sit here in the United States Capitol surrounded by National Guard troops and barbed wire, how will you bring the full resources of the Justice Department to bear on white supremacist organizations that pose an ongoing threat to not just our safety and not just the safety of this Capitol building, but to our fundamental democracy for which it stands?
I couldn't agree more that extremist groups, and particularly white supremacist groups, do pose a fundamental threat to our democracy, and they have posed that threat throughout our history. And as I recounted, that was the reason the Justice Department was originally established, to fight the first incarnation of the Ku Klux Klan. The best that I can do is, as I said, my first priority will be to have a briefing on where we are, if I'm confirmed, with the investigations, which from the outside appear quite vigorous and nationwide, and to find out what additional resources we need. But that is just a focus on what happened in the Capitol. We also have to have a focus on what is happening all over the country and on where this could spread and where this came from. And that requires, it does require a lot of resources. I am very pleased to have read that the director of the FBI believes that this kind of extremism is the most dangerous threat to the country, and that's where he's putting FBI resources. And that is where I would put Justice Department resources. And we need very much to make sure that that's the case. I do want to be careful that we also always worry about the foreign threat, because it is always with us, and the fact that nothing has happened recently doesn't mean it could not happen tomorrow. So from whichever direction, inside, outside, right, left, doesn't matter, an attack on our institutions of democracy and of our ability to go forward with our daily lives in safety has to be stopped. And that we need it all, it's a government-wide.
It's a good thing, Merrick, that lefties want to expand democracy, not overthrow it.
But also a Justice Department-wide obligation.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator. Senator Tillis would be next, but he is not in Zoom range for that possibility. And so Senator Blackburn, if she can connect with us, is next up.
Yes, sir. I am connected, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. And Judge Garland, I want to say thank you to you for your willingness to serve and for your career in public service. And I will tell you, as I've talked to Tennesseans about this, they care a lot about law, order, timeliness at the Justice Department. And after the Christmas Day bombing, you and I discussed this and the bombing that took place in Nashville. They really are interested in the principles and the convictions of our nation's top law enforcement official. And my hope is, and I think the expectation is, that you will assure the American people that you are going to apply the law fairly and equitably, because in this country, as we know, no one is above the law. Now, I know you've been asked about the Durham investigation, and I will tell you that this is important to Tennesseans, and making certain that that investigation is going to be completed and that you are going to work to be certain that it is not impeded and is completed, and that you're committed to seeing this through to completion.
Well, thank you, Senator. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity we had to discuss these matters earlier as well. As I said, with respect to the Durham investigation, I don't...
They're just going over all the old ground. Okay, we're done here. We've checked out quite a bit. Hey. Hello, somebody watching. Are you in the... Don't switch, I already know. Nobody's in the general. No? Okay. And how are we doing today? That was very interesting. He handled quite a few of those questions fairly well. Political divide contributed to 500,000 deaths. Well, yeah. Of course. That's super obvious. Oh, yeah. Dennis Prager. Jesus. Are China and Russia allies? Not really. Adam Mealy. Alright. Who wants some React Andy content? Who wants the React Andy? Because we'll get to it. Oh, wait. I should have done this the smarter way. We're gonna react to Prager poo? No?
What's happening in our schools?
Nothing. Shut up. And here, let's... Ben Shapiro. Okay, we got two things. It's nothing. Shut up, Ben. Okay. How long have I been here? 2 hours? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take myself a quick break because I need to use the restroom and my knees hurt from work today. So I'll be back, but I will leave y'all with some tunes, okay? Here you go.
It's not enough. at your soul, and fall into your mirror, release control. It should have been clear, the look in their eyes, the voice in your head, repeating all the time. It's not enough. Look at the circle. Turn your gray to brown. Feeling you can no longer be found. It's not enough. You can't just take the train. You can't just run away. You can't just run away. It's not enough. It's not enough to fool yourself anymore. It's not enough. It's not enough to fool yourself anymore.
All right. I want to make myself some chocolate milk and stand up for a second. All right. What do we got, Ben?
It's pretty incredible how political all of American life has become. I have a bevy of stories about this today. So, Coca-Cola has now decided that they are going to force their employees to take anti-racism training with the execrable Robin DiAngelo. Robin DiAngelo is the worst public intellectual in America. She's
Robin DiAngelo, I think, is a neolib shit and is kind of an opportunist, but his criticisms are going to be so dumb. I saw something about this from somebody completely different. I don't remember who the fuck did it. Was it Crowder or something like that? I don't remember.
She's awful. She's a cult leader. If you read her book, her garbage book, White Fragility, the entire argument that she makes is that black people cannot take care of their own future, that white liberals like Robin DiAngelo have to take care of black people's future, that black people, by dint of being black, are systematically discriminated against, and that white people who fail to recognize this suffer from white fragility, the only solution to which is to listen to Robin DiAngelo and what she tells you. The only way that you can clear yourself of the racist drippings that have adhered to you is by taking a $20,000 diversity course from Robin DiAngelo. So Coca-Cola duly did this because this is what corporations do. Corporations are afraid of liability. They're afraid that someone will sue them for discrimination. And so they hire people like Robin DiAngelo to give them the cover to continue to do business. They feel like, okay, fine. So for 20 grand, now I can say when I'm sued by some upset employee that we gave everybody the anti-racism training. Okay, so Robin DiAngelo was doing this training, and we have some screen caps from this particular training. Here are some of the screen caps. Confronting racism, understanding what it means to be white, challenging what it means to be racist. Solid stuff here from Robin DiAngelo. Okay, to be less white. Okay, so here's how, right, we don't want you to be white. We want you to be less white, which, okay, This isn't racist at all, by the way. To be less
It's not. I can agree that there's some poor wording here because it should say to lessen whiteness as a structure, not to be less white as in you need to not be a white person. But he's gonna get super fucking triggered over this because poor wording.
less white is to be less oppressive, be less arrogant, be less certain, be less defensive, be less ignorant, be more humble, listen, believe, break with apathy, break with white solidarity. Now, we need to take a moment here to explain what exactly Robin DiAngelo is saying. Again, this is Coca-Cola employees being subjected to this overt racism. Because if you're white, this means that you're oppressive, arrogant, certain, defensive, ignorant, humble. You must, not humble. You need to listen and believe. You're apathetic, and you have white solidarity if you're white. So you need to be less white. I don't know how. Like, really, how are you less white?
It literally tells you. Look at this. He's so mad. He's so fucking mad over nothing.
She doesn't mean that you color your skin, obviously. That's racist. Instead, what she means is that you have to be a person who listens to Robin DiAngelo. You are, by being a white person, oppressive. Unless you recognize that you're oppressive, in which case you're less white in some way. You're arrogant if you're white. You might think of yourself as not arrogant. Wrong. Because now you're engaging in defensiveness. Right? This is the stupid little game she plays, this perverse game. Right? She says, you're oppressive and you're arrogant and you're certain about all your stuff. You're like, well, no, I don't feel like I've oppressed anybody. And as far as arrogance, I mean, frankly, I kind of know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and I'm not good at a lot of things. And I'm not super certain, actually. In fact, I have a lot less certainty than Robin DiAngelo. So I kind of deny this stuff. And she goes, you're being defensive.
No, that's a straw man if I've ever fucking seen one. Okay, so there's quite a few points that Ben has made, and he's wrong on all of them. Okay, so the point about defensiveness. Actually, let's see. We're at 259. Let me see if I can pull up the points here. Be less oppressive. Okay, that's really, really vaguely worded. Be less arrogant. White people do have a lot of arrogance, and they use it. That arrogance is used in things like calling police on a black person in a park, going down from your house to question a UPS driver doing his job because he's not white, and it made you uncomfortable. That kind of ties into the being certain thing, because they were certain that no consequences would come of it. Be less defensive. If somebody calls you out on racism, don't be defensive about it. You might ask them how, try to learn, apologize, and that ties into being less ignorant. Try to learn how the systems that you benefit from come generally at the cost of other people. Be more humble. Listen. Yeah, those things. Believe. That is super vague. I'll give him that particular criticism. He hasn't gotten to the be less. He just got to be less defensive at 259. Break with apathy. Well, yeah, you need to embrace empathy. That's just something the leftists want to do. And break with white solidarity. Yeah, you don't want racial solidarity. You want fucking class solidarity.
Ignorant. Be more humble. Listen. Believe. Break with apathy. Break with white solidarity. Right? If you fight back against her, now you're defensive, which means you're being white again. Stop that. You have to be less ignorant, right? Because you're ignorant because you're white. You say, well, no, I'm not ignorant. Actually, I know a lot of things. Nope. There you are.
Nope, that's a conflation, as I already mentioned. Because ignorant, it is probably expanded upon later. These are bullet points that Ben is getting mad over. But I'm sure it'll get expanded on later to talk about how you need to be less ignorant of the systems that benefit you and how they can oppress other people and shit like that.
are being defensive again. You need to be more humble, which I love that just to fill out this slide, she had be less arrogant and also be more humble, which is the same thing. You have to listen and believe. Listen and believe. Okay, by listen and believe, she means that if someone tells you that they feel that they have been subjected to some sort of predation by another person, you can't evaluate the evidence. You can't say, okay, well, I understand you feel that way. The feeling may be authentic, but what is the evidence to back whether the feeling is just?
No, Ben. No. It doesn't have anything to do with disregarding evidence. Listen means listen. It's probably talking about if somebody feels like there is an issue, you should listen to them. And believe is don't disregard it out of hand. Just like with believe all women, it doesn't mean... See, that's the exact same argument he used. The exact same argument. Oh, if somebody comes out with a rape accusation, you should just believe the woman. Don't look into it. Facts don't matter. You should just believe. It's the exact same argument. I guarantee you. You can look up Ben talking about this. Previously, when it comes to believe all women in the Me Too movement. I remember this. I used to listen to him at this point in time. Jeez.
Justified. Authentic and justified are two very different things. A lot of people feel things authentically that are not justified by the underlying fact pattern. This happens all the time. My kids feel authentically angry at me on a variety of bases. That does not mean that their feelings are justified. My son yesterday was time.
They probably are justified. I mean, you're Ben Shapiro. People being mad at you, just at the merit of you being you, is probably justified.
For him to go to bed. And my son decided that he did not want to go to bed. Right? And he was very angry at me because I said, we have to stop playing Legos. You need to go to bed. His feelings were authentic. They were not justified. It was time for him to go to bed. By the way, he was so upset at this that he then went and peed on the floor because this is what children do. Funny now, wasn't at the time. His feelings were authentic. Peeing on the floor was not justified. In any case,
that he beat that kid. I bet. Allegedly.
Listen and believe is what Robin DiAngelo says. You must believe. You have to break with apathy. Because what she means by break with apathy is you just have to mirror everything she says, or you're apathetic. And finally, you have to break with white solidarity because you understand if you refuse to go along with what she's saying, this means that essentially you're a white solidarity supremacist.
No. No, that's not at all what she's saying. She's saying if you just initially reject claims of racism or feelings of being marginalized to stand with white people who are doing the act that is being accused, then you are showing white solidarity, and that upholds racist structures. It kind of happened in the courts. 1868 to, well, today. So, it's an issue. And we got to work on it. But with people like you wandering around going, oh, this is a problem, let me put up this straw man to set on fire. It makes it a little more difficult to actually address the issues. Ben. How the fuck do people follow this guy?
So let's say that you don't really want to listen to this. They are the way they price stems. Seamless Bluetooth. Purchase again. Lucky suckers over at Coca-Cola. In the U.S. and other Western nations, white people are socialized to feel that they are inherently superior because they are white. Research shows that by age 3 to 4, children understand that it is better to be white. Oh, is that what the research shows? Is it now? Huh, interesting. Also,
do you have any counterfactuals on that? Because if I looked it up, I'm sure that's what it would show. But notice he didn't put up any. He hasn't put up anything. He's moving on. Look, I'll show you.
I'm just gonna. White people are socialized to feel they are inherently superior because they're white. Actually, no. The civil rights movement socialized us to believe that people should be treated as individuals.
No, it didn't. Obviously. You don't treat people like they're individuals, Ben. How do you feel about Arabs, Ben? Me, as a leftist, they're people. You're a people. You're a shit people. You specifically, Benjamin. You're a shitty human. But you're still a human. You should still be taken care of. And generally shown some baseline level of compassion. Like, we shouldn't just let you starve. We shouldn't let you die from disease. We shouldn't let you be homeless. But outside of that, you're such a terrible individual that I really don't care.
It is your educational training that makes white people feel that they are superior because it is only white people who can solve the problems for black people.
No. Not. Oh, God. Did he really just. No. White supremacy has been a major issue in this country since long before Robin DiAngelo came around and wrote fucking White Fragility. She wrote a book. And guess what? It has white supremacists fucking mauling. Ben, you're so mad. Why? Is it perhaps because you are a racist? Benjamin Shapiro? A racist? No way.
It's something Shelby Steele pointed out in his own book, White Guilt, which is that one of the beautiful things about being somebody like Robin DiAngelo is the only person who can solve the problem is white people. You still get to be superior if you're Robin DiAngelo.
No. Okay. There's a difference between, hey, this is a problem that white people caused, and so white people need to work on this within themselves. And, oh, white people are the only people who can solve this problem. Especially since it's telling you to learn, and learn, coming in the context, I guarantee, of learn from black people. Listen to them. That's what it is. And so it's putting people who are affected by the systems in a negative way in a position to educate the people who fucking made those systems, white people, on how they're harmful in certain ways so that they can be addressed. Because who holds a majority of the power in the country? Oh, is it fucking whitey? Huh. I wonder why white people might be responsible for having to address these problems. They made the problem. They still hold a majority of the power. Huh.
You still get paid 20 grand to fix America's racial problems because you're owning it, you see. And finally, try to be less white. Honestly, this should be like the 1984 Apple commercial. It's just Robin DiAngelo talking to you like Big Brother until somebody comes in with the logic hammer and flings it at the screen. Try to be less white. Okay, so Coca-Cola, a massive company, hired Robin DiAngelo to teach this crap to the people who work at Coca-Cola. Yes, your corporate overlords, they're willing to buy into this stuff. Now, question.
Oh, there we go. I haven't heard Ben ever really... I don't remember him using that style of language. Corporate overlords. That's an interesting phrase there, Ben. Last time I heard that, it was from a Nazi.
Why are they willing to buy into this stuff? The reason they are willing to buy into this stuff is for really three reasons. One, the people who are buying into this stuff do so because they're afraid of boycott. And they're afraid really of publicity. They understand that if you are perceived as a liberal corporation, fewer people are going to come after you. Right? That is a rationale for doing this. There's a study, I've cited it before, from Harvard Business Review. It showed that if you put together a focus group of people from all different political sides of the aisle, and you ask them about a corporation. And you ask them about the corporation being formed in 3 different ways. 1, as a politically neutral corporation. 2, as a politically liberal corporation. And 3, as a conservative corporation. The crowd's reaction would be wildly different. If you just said, same corporation, it's neutral, people were like, okay, sounds good. If you said it was liberal, people were like, okay, sounds good. If you said it was conservative, the positivity ratings dropped by 33 percentage points, all among people who are lefty.
Yeah, because conservatives aren't good. They're just not. What are you trying to conserve? It's not the environment. It's not people's economic freedom. It's not anything good. It's white supremacy and capitalism. Those are your 2 fucking things that you are trying to conserve. Both bad, not based. Real cringe. Okay? What I thought.
Coca-Cola understands this. If they are perceived to be the lefty corporation, they understand that people on the right will still buy Coke, and people on the left will be more apt to buy Coke and less apt to go after them. So that is reason number 1. Reason number 2, it shields them from liability. And reason number...
Do you have actual evidence on the first claim there? It does shield them from liability. That's definitely a thing, and that's probably the reason that they actually did it, and probably the sole reason they do it.
Number 3, because most of the people who now run these corporate boards are people who are liberal, they have no systemic intellectual defense against the hard left. People who are liberal and innately believe in the guilt of the United States. But
No. No. Not at all. Liberals slide to fascism more easily than they move to leftism of any brand. You're more likely to get a fascist out of a liberal than you are a fucking socialist. At least previously. Because the fascists had all the messaging. We had the Ben... All there was the Ben Shapiros. The Styx Hexenhammers. The fucking Sargon of Akkads. The Thunderfoots. But... Oh, and the Razor Fists. Oh my god. But, then it turned around. The lefties didn't have good debate skills. And then we got people like Ben Burgess, who's not the best at debate, but he's a logic professor. And he gives good arguments. And then we got, Jangle Science Lab, and Vosh, and Xanderhall. And then we got Dylan Burns coming in. And it's like the lefty debate side of things solidified. It got strong. And now we've got people moving to the left. Because the lefties learned how to fucking debate. I'm not great at it. I'm okay. I can do it. But it's not something that I've had a lot of practice to cut my teeth on. At least not in a verbal one-on-one sense. Twitter debate's fucking easy as shit. Because all you gotta do is call them stupid, and then link a bunch of articles that prove your point. And that's it. You can't necessarily just do that. You have to know the points. At least at an in-person debate. If you're doing it over Discord, and you have a chat can just throw you links, and you can just blow them out with facts and logic and evidence. It's great.
But they also believe in certain individual rights. The problem is, if you believe in the innate guilt of the United States and the innate evil of the United States, it's very hard to also believe in the goodness and rightness of the individual rights upon which the United States is predicated. You can't both believe that America's ideas start in 1619 and that America's ideas start in 1776. These are mutually exclusive beliefs.
Yeah. But that's why they say that slavery started in America in 1619. White supremacy started in America. This place was called America before it became the United States. It is North America that contains Mexico, the United States, and Canada. So, when they say slavery started in America in 1619, that's because it did. Slavery is older than the United States on this continent. For fucking sure. The enslavement of black people is older than the United States on this continent. By over 100 years.
So you got to pick. A lot of liberals are picking 1619 because it makes them feel better about themselves. Okay, so that's what's happening over at Coca-Cola. And this sort of stuff has infused so many different corporations. You see it obviously over at Disney. Right? Not only did Disney plus Lucasfilm decide to fire Gina Carano for no good reason, simply because she didn't
No good reason. Simply because
go
what?
along with the woke left.
No, it's because she compared being a conservative today to being in the fucking Holocaust. That's why. And they went, oh, considering the history this company has with our founder literally being an American Nazi, we might not want to allow this. That's probably bad. Bad optics. You get out of here. Now she's working with Ben Shapiro on a fucking movie. That's gonna be awful.
But now, they've decided to hit the Muppets with an offensive content label. Now, this was the most predictable thing in all the land. They announced that you'd be able to watch the Muppets on Disney+. I immediately tweeted out that within 3 weeks, The Swedish Chef would be canceled. Right? It's perfectly obvious. I was wrong. It didn't take 3 weeks. It took 3 days. Disney has now slapped The Muppet Show with an offensive content disclaimer. The Muppet Show. The warning also appears in front of Bambi. Well, not Bambi, rather. Bambi's okay because it's just about deer, right? Aristocat, Dumbo, Peter Pan, and of course, Swiss Family Robinson.
Yeah. I don't remember all of those off the top of my head, but there was some, like, bad shit in those. Now, what was the one that he called?
Oh. The warning also appears in front of Bambi. Content disclaimer. The Muppet Show. The warning also appears mentionable. Hey, and then you've got Cartoon Network now pushing Aristocat, Dumbo, Peter Pan, and of course, Swiss Family Robinson. All great movies, all apparently unmentionable. Hey, and then you've got Cartoon Network now pushing anti-racism. Okay, so you've got...
He just says it. And now you've got Cartoon Network even pushing anti-racism. Yeah! Everyone should! What the fuck, Ben? Of course! Like what? Are you kidding? Oh. That maxes that out. Oh, okay. I just need to turn it down. But yeah, of course. That's a big... I don't understand why he would say that. There we go. I think that would be fine. But seriously, yes, they're pushing anti-racism. That's not a bad thing, Ben. It's only bad if you're a racist.
Got Robin DiAngelo not just teaching Coca-Cola, but mainstreamed into Cartoon Network. Now, it's one thing to get mad at the Muppets from 1987 for telling a joke that you now consider culturally insensitive 30 years later. It's another thing to get mad at Cartoon Network when Cartoon Network is literally just putting out PSAs mirroring for children, mirroring Robin DiAngelo's talking points on racism and indoctrinating kids into overtly racist garbage. Here's the Cartoon Network pushing what is obviously racism.
Well, I'm not an alien, but it definitely matters to me that I'm black. Yeah, it makes a difference that I'm white. I know the two of us get treated very differently. My experience with anti-black racism is really specific. Other people of color experience other forms of racism too, but you won't see any of that if you don't see color.
Can we get a rewrite where we appreciate each other without erasing what makes each of us different?
Okay, but it's gonna add a couple hours to the shoot.
I can make it work. Open.
You were rolling just now, weren't you? Can't we just slap some graphics on this and call it a day?
See color.
Yeah. Okay, that's really easy because the argument is that black people don't want you to be a, oh, I don't see color kind of liberal. They want you to go, no, recognize me. I am black. I have had a specific struggle. This person is from a Latin community. They have had a specific struggle. This person is from a Native American community. They have had a different and specific struggle. See it. Recognize it. Fix it.
Color, be anti-racist. Shut up, racist children. See color, be anti-racist. So, yes, we are all supposed to see each other as people of different colors whose experiences are completely non-understandable. I cannot understand your experience in any way.
No, that's not what they said. They said that they have had different experiences, and that's it.
And because I can't understand your experience, this is the Robin DiAngelo stuff, I have to listen and believe. I can never try to assess whether your opinion on a matter is non-factually or evidentiarily based.
No. And also, you're really bad at figuring out if something is logical. All I gotta say is, sell their houses to who, Ben?
Instead, I have to listen and believe because, you see, I see color. So I'm an anti-racist, which means I have to listen and believe whatever you say and presumably accept all of your policy recommendations as well in order to destroy the systems of power. This is being taught to children at Cartoon Network. To children.
Fucking based. I don't know what to tell you. Cartoon Network is awesome. Okay? They've always been the best. Okay? They always push for the good things. Alright. That was Ben. He's dumb. Very, very bad. Not the intellectual gladiator that everybody says he is. I think I did an okay job showing how he misunderstands the arguments and does the worst interpretation. Like, the most bad faith. Biggest straw man, and that's all he fights. Because he either debates college freshmen or covers things and interprets it in the worst light he can. To push a very specific narrative. I just gave it a charitable interpretation. That's all I did. Let's go to PragerU. Ooh, that could be a segment. And by that could be, I mean... Alright, everyone. Let's go to PragerU.
What's happening in our schools? Colleges have become leftist indoctrination centers. It's not a new problem. It's been going on for decades, first behind the scenes and now out front. That's how radical change happens. It creeps up on us. And when we finally figure out what's going on, it's too late. What's been
Ooh, the big scary shadow monster that is reality and education.
happening on college campuses is now happening in elementary schools and high schools.
I like the big shadow monsters to make, education seem scary instead of it literally being just, oh no, the Civil War was fought over states' rights and the Thanksgiving and American colonialism was getting along with the natives. Why are they on refugees? Well, we had one bad year or three where we did this Trail of Tears thing, but it was meant to give them a good home. And that is literally what they used to teach. As someone who who grew up in Oklahoma, let me tell you, not good, folks.
I know. I'm a mom of 2 school-aged kids. I've seen it with my own eyes. More and more parents are seeing it too. Thanks to the lockdowns and Zoom, we're getting a window into our children's classes. It's not a pretty picture. Kids, really young kids, are being taught stuff so radical, so devoid of what real education is, it should alarm us all.
Oh, the priming. Why don't you just give some examples, and we will assess whether or not that's the case. Because schools just teach things that are, it's just education. They just go, hey, this is what happened, for the most part. Now, elementary schools and stuff weren't very good. High schools weren't. I mean, high schools were better, but still. If things got updated because, we discover more about history the more we look, I I think you'll find that if that's what kids are being taught, it's because it's more up-to-date information than what your old ass was taught.
Here are a few examples. Recently, Chicago Public Schools adopted an American history curriculum based on the 1619 Project published and promoted by the New York Times. The 1619 Project asserts that America's founding was not marked by the Declaration of Independence in 1776, but the arrival of the first African slaves in Jamestown in 1619.
Yeah, Jamestown was the first successful settlement. That's what started colonialism on this place, which is what allowed more people to come and colonize, which led to the creation of America.
Historians from across the political spectrum have denounced this as a giant lie.
No, not really. No. It has been embraced. No. God, holy shit. Okay, no, there's been some small critiques about different things, but overall they accept this as a historical fact, including conservative ones. The outright lying that PragerU does. Oh my god.
The New York Times has walked back many of the project's original claims. Still, this malicious slander of America is now being taught in schools as truth.
Malicious slander. Well, the fact that historians are the ones who wrote the 1619 Project and not the New York Times. The 1619 Project is a group of fucking historians, you dumbass. It was just published in the New York Times. So, you might need to walk back some of your statements here. Because you claimed that it was a New York Times thing. They just published it. And of course they promoted it because they published it. That's what publishing is, a form of promotion.
And what is that truth? That America is, was, and always has been a fundamentally racist country, and that white Americans today bear responsibility for all current and historic racism.
No, that is not what it claims. Everything up into the white people today bit is true. This bit is her lying to you and hoping you don't go check. What it does say is that we're responsible for fixing. And of course, yes, there are white people who are currently racist, and those people are responsible for current racism. And, to a very minor degree, there is an argument to be made that white people today who do not fight against the systems that are oppressive and racist are complicit with those systems. They don't oppose them. They are passive to them. And so, in a sense, they support them. Now, I dislike that line of reasoning because that's kind of a line of reasoning that fascists use. Passivity is trafficking with the enemy.
This bleeds perfectly into another educational debacle: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, this might sound innocent, but don't be fooled. It's a dangerous euphemism for something called critical race theory.
You don't even know what that is. Critical race. Okay, let's listen to her description.
Critical race theory says that racism is woven into the very fabric of American society.
No, it does not. Bold-faced lie. Critical race theory is just a lens of analysis. It's based off of critical theory, which is based off of the Marxist dialectic. Now, what that means is that you are analyzing society based on the antagonist and the quote-unquote, like, oppressed. The antagonizer and the oppressor and the oppressed. Who is doing oppression and who is being oppressed by it. Critical race theory just analyzes it through a racial lens. That's it. That's all it is. Who is oppressing and who is being oppressed. Marxist dialectic, it's the wealthy versus the workers. The owners versus the workers. That's the dialectic. Critical race theory says, in America, white people to pretty much everyone the fuck else. Oppressor to oppressed. So it does not say that racism is woven into the fabric of American society. It just analyzes society and came to the conclusion, if you do the analysis, that there's a lot of racism built into the systems.
What does this look like in a school setting? Middle and high school students in Wellesley, Massachusetts, are being taught to be on the lookout for unconscious racial bias in their classmates. "We need your help," an email to students reads. "Your school leaders will be working with you this year on how to be proactive about preventing bias incidents and how to report them should they occur."
And that's bad how? If somebody's doing something that's racially biased, then they should be spoken to about it. Reporting them doesn't mean, taking them out back and shooting them. Jesus fucking Christ.
This warped vision of America doesn't stop at race. In Colorado, first graders are being taught that just because someone looks like a boy doesn't mean they are.
That's true. Just because someone, quote unquote, looks like a boy, that doesn't mean they are. Oh my god. The fucking snowflakery and the whininess about information updating past your education, which was probably 25 years ago when you graduated high school. If not more, I don't know.
Only they can know who they truly are. Gender is something they choose for themselves, based on how masculine or feminine they feel. Or maybe they're not fully a boy or a girl, but something in between. Whatever that may be.
A non-binary person. Because I like the binary models they're using, though. kind of a jab.
To repeat, that's what children are taught in first grade. Imagine what they're taught in second or third grade.
More of how that applies. Duh. If they're being taught about systems, then that's probably a good thing. Kids need to learn about systems and how to respect one another. Did you know in Japan that your first 2 years of school, I believe, are just being taught manners, respect? And then basic reading and writing in 2 different languages. at a certain point. You learn Japanese, and you also learn English, and I think you can learn Chinese and stuff in middle school. So, cool.
And, of course, the world faces imminent disaster from global warming.
Yep.
The American Federation of Teachers has fully endorsed the most radical aspects of the Green New Deal.
Good. That's good. Because guess what? Teachers, they have to go to like seminars and they have to get new information and shit like that. Trust me, I've spoken to a lot of teachers in my time. I was a troublesome youth. Very precocious. Very prone to not being in my classroom. In, senior year. I didn't really even need to go. But there was a lot of, no, so I spoke to a lot of fucking teachers in my time. And, yeah, they have to go and do a lot of work. They have to learn a lot of things so that they can present this information. And they have to understand it. So teachers are fairly well educated on the subjects they're bringing forth. At least, oftentimes. And, since this is all done by academics, like the smart people that you're trying to impugn, I don't even know who you are, lady. Yeah, that's just it. She doesn't want your kids to be educated. It's outright fascism. They're learning things that they don't support, so no. Fuck it. You don't need to learn.
Which is already featured in California school curriculums.
Good.
In some, many of our schools are teaching children that our past is terrible
Yep.
and that they have no future.
No. They're teaching children that they need to work to maintain having a future. Now, kids can't do anything but trying to convince their parents, their grandparents, put social pressure on their peers and their elders to do better. Kind of a thing.
That if they are white, they are racist whether they know it or not. If they're black, they're victims, whether they experience it or not.
Very poor wording on your choice because you chose it. But in a sense, yeah. White people probably do have unconscious biases that they don't recognize. They're unconscious. So, I mean, it's the thing. It's a product of social conditioning. And, black people do get victimized either by the police or by the fact that the economic system has been barred from them. Like, they've been barred from it for centuries. If you have a race scheduled for 10 in the morning and you show up at 6 and you're already starting that race, and then your opponent shows up at 10 and they're not allowed in until 2, 3 p.m., you're really far ahead. Just saying.
That they should constantly question their sexual identity. With all this being drummed into their heads, no wonder today's kids have more psychological problems than any previous generation. Maybe you think I'm cherry-picking examples to exaggerate my point, or maybe you're one of the lucky ones who sends your kids to a school that has yet to be infected.
No, and it's not an infection. What's an infection is the brainworms you have for having done this fucking video.
Affected by this radical agenda. Maybe. But if I were you, I wouldn't take it on faith. Find out for yourself. When I did, I was shocked to learn that all of this is happening in my school district right now.
Alright, facts do not care about your feelings. Your kids are going to be smarter than you. They're going to be more empathetic than you, and they're going to make the world a better place than anything you could ever do. Because you don't want to make it better. You want to backslide. I guarantee it. That's why you're on PragerU.
So find out what's being taught in your kid's school. Take a good, hard look at curricula. Ask administrators if they endorse the 1619 Project. Are they pushing a diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda? If so, demand to see what materials the school is using. At a minimum, get to know your kids' teachers and principals. Join the PTA, attend local school board meetings, look for allies among reasonable, like-minded parents.
Reasonable. By definition, you are not being reasonable. Because the things that kids are being taught is factual fucking information. And you are losing your shit over it.
You don't have to agree with each other on everything. You just have to agree that the brainwashing of our children stops.
Well, good thing they're not being brainwashed. They're being taught factual information that has moved past your tiny-brained understanding of how the world works. Children are smarter than you.
Stops here. Stops now.
Nope.
Americans know what our children should be learning. That they must
Yeah, exactly what schools are teaching them today.
take responsibility for their conduct. That race is the least important aspect of another person. That hard work and
Nah, see, here's the thing. Since there's been a lot of racial bias, historically and currently in America, race is kind of a thing that you need to look at and recognize that there's advantages and disadvantages to each of them. And white people got the systemic advantage. So maybe work on that. Oh, but you don't want that. You don't want it at all because you're a white lady on PragerU.
rational thought are things we all value.
She looks kind of white to me.
That there is nothing wrong with the bodies they were born into. And that America was founded not to promote.
It's not that they're being taught that there's something wrong with the bodies they were born into, quote unquote. It's just that not everybody fits the way that you would put them in a binary, you stupid fuck. And, no, America was explicitly founded to promote racism. It just was. Well, not explicitly founded to promote it, but it was founded and definitely explicitly promoted it.
Racism, but to guarantee sacred liberties and opportunities to its citizens.
Oh, to its citizens. No, it doesn't say to its citizens. It says to all people. All. Well, the actual wording is all men are created equal. But, they sure found ways around that, didn't they?
And it wouldn't hurt if they learned reading and writing and math, too.
Oh, notice how she didn't focus on the actual important things? She focused on the fucking indoctrination that she wants. Impugning the schools for quote-unquote indoctrinating kids with gender theory, critical race theory, as well as, math and hard science, because, the gender theory and stuff fits into science. It actually fits into a higher level, like, university kind of shit. But if you can get a baseline understanding at a younger age, that could help. So, yeah, look at that. This is the face of a serial killer. She has bodies. I would almost bet on it. She has bodies in her fucking backyard. That smile. Nope.
I'm Jill Simonian, founder of thefabmom.com for Prager University.
Okay, yep. Awful like I thought. Jesus Christ.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas issuing a big warning today about the future of U.S. elections. Justice Thomas dissenting as the High Court ruled 6-3, address just
These cases provide us with an ideal opportunity to address what authority non-legislative officials have to set election rules, and to do so well before the next election cycle. The refusal to do so is inexplicable.
What authority non-legislative officials have to set election rules and to do so well before the next election cycle. Your rule.
We have failed to settle this dispute before the election and thus provide clear rules. Now we again fail to provide clear rules for future elections. The decision to leave election law hidden
Rules. Now we again face confusion.
beneath a shroud of doubt is baffling. By doing nothing, we invite further confusion and erosion of voter confidence. Our fellow citizens deserve better and expect more of us. Okay. It's an optics game, and that's not what the Supreme Court plays. The Supreme Court looks at law, looks at cases brought before them, and goes, oh, this has merit, we'll see it. Or, no, this has literally no fucking merit, get this shit out of my court. You should know better, Clarence Thomas. You're not an optics machine. You don't worry about optics. I've never thought that the fucking Supreme Court should really worry about optics. Economics explained on the Soviet economy. No, it wasn't that bad. It's more the human rights shit. No, it couldn't, Tucker. Alright, so we've done a little bit of React Andy. I don't do that as much as I probably should, but that's fine. Get into that recording. Bleach was pretty good. Up until the end. It is 8:51. How long has this been going? 3 hours? Just about. And, nobody's on, and the Huffer's not on, and Jaden's not on. So, I suppose we go ahead and end this stream. It was a good one, I think. I got some content out of it. I had fun. Hopefully y'all did too. And if you did, like, comment, subscribe. Please.